You ever wake up thinking the world's just about the same as you left it, only to step outside and realize everything's been flipped upside down overnight? Yeah, that's how it started for my grandpa Harold. He walked out that morning for his paper, like he always did, coffee in hand and jacket still warm from the dryer, only to see the alley behind his house completely gone. In its place stood this shiny, iron fence, new as a hospital bill and just as cold. There was a sign screwed in with letters too clean to be anything but trouble, private HOA easement. No trespassing. The kind of sign that doesn't just keep people out, it makes sure you know who put it up. And let me tell you, when you see your freedom fenced off like that, it stings. Even the morning sun felt different, weaker, like it couldn't get through the metal. Harold just stood there, staring at that fence, hands in his pockets, jaw set the way I only ever saw when he was fixing something that mattered. The old alley wasn't much, just a run of gravel behind a row of worn-out backyards, with mulberry trees leaning over and the smell of dew that always reminded him of Eleanor, his late wife. She used to call it their little escape route, the place you could walk when life inside got too loud. But now, all of that was gone, boxed up by the HOA without a warning, like they thought the world would just keep spinning and nobody'd notice. I showed up a few minutes later, carrying groceries and questions, and sure enough, Grandpa was already sizing up that fence like it was a puzzle. "They put it up before sunrise," I said. He didn't answer, just disappeared into the shed and came back with his old tool roll, wrench, pry bar, and that ancient socket set. I tried to warn him. "Grandpa, please, don't make this worse." He just tapped the radio as he walked by, letting some Louis Armstrong brass cut through the morning air, and started working on the bolts. Neighbors peeked through their curtains. Kids stopped their bikes to stare, and there was my grandfather, 78 and stubborn as a storm, undoing what they'd built, section by section, stacking each piece off to the side like he was cleaning up after a mess he hadn't made. By sundown, half the alley was open again. But victory, if you could call it that, didn't last long. That evening, we got a thick envelope, official, legal, threatening. Cease and desist. Unauthorized tampering of HOA property. Legal consequences to follow. Grandpa read it once, folded it up, and slid it in a drawer next to Eleanor's recipe cards. He didn't say a word, just sipped his coffee like nothing had happened. The next afternoon, we sat in that bland, donut-scented HOA meeting. The room was packed, some folks curious, some nervous, and at the front was Maureen Tillman, head of the HOA, wearing a look that could chill a cactus. "This isn't just about a fence," she said, voice sharp as a razor. "It's about respect for order." Grandpa didn't flinch. "I already don't," he replied deadpan. The room went silent, and you could feel the tension crackle, like a storm was rolling in, but no one wanted to be the first to open an umbrella. That night, while the rest of the block tried to move on, I couldn't let it go. So I dug into the zoning database. Lot 14B, it said. No bidders, no owners since '93. An alley left to rot in the paperwork. I called Samira, a neighbor who knew her way around city records better than most lawyers. She came by, thermos in hand, and confirmed it. Ghost lot. HOA's been bluffing. Grandpa didn't say much, but the next morning he was down at City Hall with a cashier's check and a map. By noon, he'd bought the alley out from under them. When the deed arrived, he just handed it to me with a soft smile. "I own the alley now." Of course, the HOA doubled down. They posted bigger signs, threatened lawsuits, sent more letters with more complicated words. Harold just kept fixing things. Oil on the hinges, new white gate, curved and carved with a single word above, "Still ours." It was beautiful, honest work, the kind you don't see much anymore. Neighbors slowed to look, some nodded, others turned away. But the message was clear. This wasn't about a fence. It was about belonging, about not letting someone with a clipboard and an attitude decide where your story ends. That was when things got interesting. The next week, we started seeing folding chairs set up in the alley, mugs of coffee passed from hand to hand. Samira brought blueprints. Mr. Vern, quiet, gruff, but with a soft spot for birds, hung a feeder from a branch, and before long, what used to be just a gravel pass-through was turning into a garden. Holloway Garden, someone called it, and the name stuck. Herbs in terracotta pots, kids planting bulbs too deep, and pie. Always pie, because Martha swore you couldn't solve a dispute without carbs. Twist of fate. An anonymous letter arrived, complaining about unauthorized cultivation, zoning violations, improper waste management. Only return address was the HOA's mailbox, no signature. Samira just shrugged. Fine, we'll file for nonprofit community use. Make it a park. Grandpa grinned and kept tending the beds. By twilight, solar lights lined the walkway. Neighbors lingered, swapping stories about life before all the rules and fences. Ramirez roasted turkey for Thanksgiving. Someone brought music, and nobody gave speeches. But the real shift came quietly. A petition passed hand to hand for a recall vote on Morin's presidency. Over 60% of residents signed. The final vote was held on a morning so cold, even the birds hesitated to sing. The line stretched past Harold's gate. People bundled up, but their eyes were alive with something I hadn't seen in years: hope. Inside, Samira ran the check-in table. Phil explained the process, and Grandpa, well, he stood at the arch, handing out lavender to kids and letting others take the lead. When the results came in, President Morin Tillman recalled, effective immediately. A cheer rolled through the crowd, gentle but unstoppable, like spring after a long winter. HOA tried one last shot, a lawsuit for destruction of property. But Samira handled it, and a few weeks later, the case was dropped. Grandpa didn't celebrate. He just replaced the private property sign with one he'd carved himself. Welcome to Holloway Garden. We had a little party. No speeches, just tea, pie, and laughter under the lanterns. Ben, that's me, snapped a photo as Harold pulled on his old brown coat, Eleanor's favorite, and looked out over the garden. Neighbors brought gifts. A little girl handed him a drawing. A gate, wide open, people walking through, above it. Thanks for letting us in. And as the sun set, Grandpa pressed a wooden stake into the garden soil. This path belongs to everyone, it read. Someone new arrived on the block, arms full of moving boxes, paused at the gate. Is this really free? She asked. I just smiled. It always was. Some folks just forgot. We watched her step through as holiday lights flickered across the garden, and for a second, you could almost hear Eleanor's wind chimes in the breeze. So, you tell me, when does a fence become more than a fence? When does a rule protect, and when does it divide? Maybe it's not about the gate at all, but about whether we're willing to open it for someone else. What would you have done in Harold's place? Let me know in the comments below, because sometimes the fight for a little alley can teach us a whole lot about the world we want to build. And hey, don't forget to share your own story. Maybe it's time we all remembered how to open a gate or two.